On any given Friday night in Zurich, Arabic is a common language heard at this Asian restaurant. It's where a dozen or so Swiss Egyptians come to meet, talk about family, business, and of course, Egyptian politics.
We talk about each other personal things, our kids, and we are kidding, we're making jokes, but if you are looking into the actual situation in Egypt, of course we talk about that. That's business number one.
None of these men wanted to give their names, but they readily offered their opinions. Most of them are Muslim, though at least two are Coptic Christians. Many are academics, doctors, engineers, businessmen. A common thought among all the guests on this night is how opaque Egypt's political situation really is.
The things are evolution, are unclear. We don't know who is manipulating who. We have a wave which tells there is an influence from outside, like countries which finance movements in a religion direction, and others who want to tell that the army want to take the power.
The views expressed at this table over tea and bowls of noodles remain political and secular, with not much concern for religious influence in revolutionary Egypt. The Coptics here, and Muslims, are first and foremost eyeing the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces and how it wields its current control over Egyptian government.
We are all worried about the whole situation in Egypt. We are all worried and we want the best for Egypt. We love our country very much. If there is a situation that I can go, I would go. I would go and share with them the revolution or do something.
Across Zurich, at a Coptic church, Maher recalls his time on Cairo's streets in the heat of the revolution.
I had to stay on the street and protect my house because the police had fled the country, more or less, or they were going home to protect their own homes. At the same time, all the criminals had escaped from the prisons. And at that time, we were thinking, okay, this is the end of it. It's going to be a civil war.
Maher asked that only his first name be used, as his wife and children remain in Egypt, afraid to leave other family members. He's worried that the military is continuing the heavy-handed rule implemented by Hosni Mubarak. All the while, so-called Islamist political parties are gaining clout.
What is more worrying is that the moderate Muslims are already fleeing the country. It's even more than the Christians, because they know that if it turns into an Islamic state, they will not have the same rights. I expect every party to try to kind of gain the power by itself, and the only solution to this anarchy would be a second revolution, so to say.
Despite the time and distance separating those in Switzerland from the revolution in Egypt, the emotions are strong and the concern is real. It's enough to drive some men to return to Tahrir regularly to check in on the revolution and to help the family living it day to day. January 2011 brought conflicted emotions for Hamed Salim. A Zurich social worker in Switzerland more than 20 years, Egypt's revolution had landed in front of his childhood home.
It started, I live downtown, It's just a couple of minutes from Tahrir Platz. I really was worried. The second thing was happy, but my family is there, and really a little bit afraid. All of these things, and always thinking, what can I do to be a part of it as an Egyptian,
Salim took leave from work immediately to take to the streets where he still feels at home, wanting to show how serious he felt the revolution is, despite some protesters seeing only a chance to perform.
28th of January, I saw it on TV. And it was like, for me, like from TV, it's a joke. You are going with camel and horses, is it a joke or what's happening now, I didn't see it as a dangerous, but I wasn't also there between them.
Tahrir was filled at that time with millions of Egyptians urging change and reform in what they saw as an oppressive system under Hosni Mubarak. Despite mostly peaceful protest, clashes erupted, notably and recently on Mohammed Mahmoud Street just off Tahrir. Tear gas, thick as fog, filled the area while protesters threw rocks. Activist footage documented security forces using buckshot and pellets to disperse the crowds. Even now, there are sporadic protests, but those are mostly peaceful.
They are saying a lot of parole against military regime, and a couple of women who are sitting in the car. It seems like mothers from children who dies in the demonstrations, like in Mohammed Mahmoud Street and Tahrir Square. Yeah, they are not satisfied with what's happening now.
I study the history of that place, of Tahrir itself, as a site, because I study urban planning. Tahrir has been transformed under Mubarak into a very weird place.
Khaled Fahmy is chair of the history department at the American University in Cairo.
They cut off trees that gave shade. They put very slippery marble tiles that make it very difficult to walk in the square, on the sidewalk. And then they erected these very, very thick and high fences that prevent people from crossing streets, supposedly for safety. But in fact, and this is in all big squares in Cairo, there's a deliberate attempt, and it doesn't take a genius to find this out, to prevent people from congregating.
Tahrir Square looks now more a carnival than a hub of revolution. Large tents and groups of people camp constantly in the square while traffic pushes and crawls through the roundabout, cars moving in every direction. Souvenir and food vendors now stand where millions protested a year ago.
People are now feeling that the country belongs to them, and that's not to be taken for granted. We did not feel that it's our country. For people to turn Tahrir Square into a circus, that is very political. That's a very interesting transformation of people taking the very core of the city, the very heart of it, and turning it into their space. They do whatever they want to do in it. The amount of conversations and deliberations and very, very serious political debates that took place in Tahrir over this last 13 months now is something that Egypt has not witnessed in 60 years.
No, they are not satisfied. And they are now walking through to Tahrir Square. It's around 100 meters.
Small groups voice their disapproval in the streets of Cairo, using their public space as they see fit. Hamed Salim is entranced by the revolution and what it's done to his country, and he's optimistic, just as optimistic as his family is, living 12 to a small home on the rooftops of downtown Cairo, just steps from Tahrir. From mounted speakers on the buildings of downtown Cairo seeps the evening call to prayer for Muslims here. The streets are crowded with cars and vendors, buildings are tall and worn, but up above it all is where Hamed Salim spent his childhood.
I born in downtown of Cairo. I lived in a roof downtown of Cairo, not in an apartment, But it's really shiny and nice and big and beautiful and lots of neighbors and everybody know each other and such things. It's like a small village.
The roof is where his mother and other families still live. 12 people stay in this small 3-room home, originally just one room made for building employees. But over the years, with help from remittances from Switzerland, Hamed's family has expanded and transformed its home of the last 60 years.
In the beginning, it was only one room, which we used to live 6 person inside, father, mother, 4 brothers. We close like a balcony. We make it a room as a kitchen, and we make another small balcony as a bathroom, yeah. And then we build an extra room and place for another 3.
Salim's family is and always has been poor. His mother, Karima, calls it living on a fixed income. She gets 500 Egyptian pounds, or about 70 Swiss francs, a month from her now deceased husband's pension. Electricity costs alone can run between 200 to 300 Egyptian pounds a month. It's with this reality that Karima Salim is optimistic for the latest revolution.
أنا شفت الملك فاروق يعني عاصرت من عائلة محمد علي شوية كده ها عاصرت شوية من.
She said in the beginning she was in the time from the king Farouk. This is from Muhammad Ali family till the revolution came from Nasser. The life was really interesting and nice and secure. And after Nasser start, life goes down till this new revolution came, which is really good for Egypt. We are suffering now, so a lot of bad things happening in the street and all over, but she's really optimistic.
Karima Salim sits in a chair in the main room of her home. 3 large couches line 3 walls. The space serves as living room, dining room, and bedroom, depending on needs. Mohammed is one of her sons.
دلوقتي الحال بقى يعتبر هو متوجه للأحسن.
Mohammed earns about 350 Egyptian pounds a month in his office job. That's about 50 Swiss francs. He says everything is still terribly expensive in Egypt after the revolution, but things are slowly improving. They need more stability, he says. But progress is already being seen with rising wages, and he was promoted. An uncle of the family, also named Mohammed, has lived in the United Arab Emirates for the last 35 years, but returned to Egypt last year.
The revolution should come since a long time ago, because the land needed. But now it's happened, and he's thankful for this, but we have to try to push ourselves in the right direction, He's waiting for something better comes as a result from this revolution. Didn't come yet. He's really optimistic, and he says it's gonna be better than what it's now.
سافرت عشان أنا بحب المعلومات العامة كتير قوي.
Karima Salim says having her son Hamid in Switzerland and traveling the world, it's like she's seen the world, though she's never left Egypt, and she considers this rooftop her home. The family seems content to watch the evolution of Egypt from up high, observing changes below. The senses can easily be overloaded in Cairo's Islamic quarter and the bazaars of Han el-Halibi. Shopkeepers eagerly bark for customers for bright and colorful tapestries, fragrant spices, and incense. Before the revolution, Hamid Salim says there were always illegal activities in parts of the market, extending seemingly for miles. But now things have changed.
Yeah, okay, I didn't see electroshock before, in the street.
Stun guns and things like that.
Yeah, I didn't see this, or these knives, like farther before the revolution, if you walk with a knife in your pocket and the police officer stop you, you are in a big problem till jail, But now you see, they sell everything. You couldn't see it before.
Do you think that's good? Was that what the revolution was for?
No, not at all. The revolution is not for such things. They would like to have, students should have a decent job, or to see that we have hospitals, or we have good schools, or such things.
The many parts of Cairo were Salim's playground and education. He's proudly from downtown, but could find value in many of the city's corners, even at the Swiss embassy, long before he thought of becoming Swiss.
the embassy, or it's just side to side to my school. And every day you pass by, since I am 6 years old, like hi, and try to play with the dog, and then you try to steal the birnen.
Pears.
Yeah, from the trees in the garden, from the other side, and it's really nice. I've never think that I could go to, didn't come in my head.
Salim met his wife while she was on vacation in Cairo, which turned into his moving to Switzerland, working for a time for Caritas, for politicians. But these Egyptian streets remain a place of comfort.
It's called the Old Islamic part, Here you found a lot of mosques from the Mamluk time, and they restore the whole area. It's really nice. Here you see behind you these people who make these souvenirs. It's really nice, It's really peaceful, yes.
How do you think things have changed for this part of Cairo since the revolution?
I think that people here are suffering because people say, because of the revolution we don't have a lot of tourists now. Yeah, they would like to have always this easy coming money, And I think the revolution did a lot of things good even for them, because I expect it will be always better, not as bad as in Mubarak time. السادات انا ناصري بصراحه ابويا طلع كده ناصري وانا بحب عبد الناصر.
The area around Cairo makes up a mega city with a population of about 20 million people. 40% of those people live at or below the international poverty line. Still, politics dominate conversations here in cafes and in just about every taxi.
A lot of opinion flowing around? No. Only two. Revolution good or bad? And we speak about both. Who says revolution is bad? Saying, look around you, there is no police here, and there is this and that. The people who think the revolution is good, they say, okay, we are patient, we are optimists.
Far from the markets and far from inner-city politics, Hamid Salim still finds quiet at the feet of the pyramids. He lives not far from the Alps in Switzerland, but comes here for peace.
As I was a student and as I was young, I came here around 4 times a week, riding horses, sleeping here, eating in the desert, making a grill. That's a part of my life which I really do love, Giving a lot of memories, Wake up the stable guys 5 o'clock in the morning and tell them, hey, I would like to have a horse now, And just riding horses, feeling of being free in the desert and pyramids.
It is but a slight respite from the many unknowns in a still evolving, revolutionary Cairo. Despite the constant din of Cairo traffic and residents, there are still quieter spots in certain parts of the city. Occasionally one finds a place along the Nile. It's also relatively calm in the southern Cairo neighborhood of Maadi. That's where the Geneva-based International Committee of the Red Cross has its offices.
The transition is not yet over. It has changed to a large extent from the demonstrations, the frequent demonstrations, and related to that clashes with the police. It has changed from that to the more political process.
Klaus Spreyerman is the head of delegation for the ICRC in Egypt.
Many services and decision-makings are slowed down, if not blocked, due to the fact that nobody knows today, and that is really a new perspective. Nobody really knows exactly where the country is going on a political level. We have seen 70% of Islamist parties actually being represented in the new parliament. How this is going to affect the country, where it is going, these are things we can't clearly see.
The ICRC has been in Egypt since at least 1935, Spreyerman says, giving it much time to watch Egypt's changes over the years, but it's unclear what the country will soon look like. Spreyerman is convinced the next great challenge here will be economic.
With the tourism down, not surprisingly, with all this bad or disturbing news that people get from Cairo too often, This is very practically influencing the possibility for income for the population. You add to that, for example, the return of hundreds of thousands of people who were used to work in Libya due to the conflict. These remittances are not coming back.
These economic challenges and those particularly affecting refugees in the region are some of the biggest concerns of the UN's refugee agency, UNHCR. Carmen Sach is the senior protection officer at the UNHCR Cairo office.
I have to say that the situation is not very ideal because socially, economically, it is challenging for the persons of concern. So we deal with a lot of frustration. I think that colleagues have been doing a great job in managing at the same time the political changes taking place in the country. And with our persons of concern here, it has been a very, very exhausting year.
Sach says things in Egypt aren't as bad as some might think they are, though there are problems. Some observers, like the Swiss government, are offering aid in the time of uncertainty. Benjamin Fry is deputy head of the Swiss program office in the Swiss embassy in Cairo.
Well, I think it's fundamental to understand that this country does not necessarily have a democratic past. It means that there is, of course, a potential here. There is a civil society that had very much trouble functioning under the Mubarak regime.
That means the Swiss are aiding NGOs, the media, but also the Egyptian government to understand democratic systems. But some problems could be institutional. Khaled Fahmy is the chair of the history department at the American University in Cairo.
It's business as usual, but people are not as usual. The people have changed, the government hasn't changed. It's up to you and to your listeners to make up their minds on whether or not the revolution has succeeded. I think that if people change, that's the most difficult thing. We see a very determined effort on the part of the regime to stay in power. This is a very, very well-entrenched regime. So it's not easy. It's not going to be dislodged in a day or two, indeed not even in a year or two.
As Egypt continues to feel its way toward a new type of governance, Fahmy thinks the most confusing and dangerous actor is the ruling military council. It is inherently undemocratic, like any military, he says. He disagrees with, but doesn't worry about the rise of political Islam in Egypt. But the lack of control and oversight over the ruling military, Fahmy says, is a grave danger to democracy.